Hello everyone, this is Bob and Threadbare, and welcome back to Threadbare Reviews. Today's request comes to us from Gelly Elfson, who wanted me to return to Berserk and review the next part of the series. And since the first review covered the Tankaban issues 1 through 5, today's review will be covering issues 6 through 10. Since this is a sequel, I won't discuss the author again, except to say that Kentaro Miura died since the first review at the unfortunately young age of 54 from a sudden heart problem. The last chapter of Berserk was number 364, and while the series may continue, it will do so without him. But the chapters I'm covering are from the early days, so let's get to them. The review. Griffith and the mercenary Band of the Hawk continue to win battles for the country of Midland, and so Griffith is awarded the rank of Baron, an award that angers the more conservative nobles in the kingdom, and especially Count Julius, the general of the White Dragon Brigade. Julius tries and fails to assassinate Griffith, and so Griffith has Guts go to his estate and assassinate both him and his teenage son. Later on, Guts and Casca, the female hawk, have a chance to open up to each other, and in the middle of doing so, Guts kills 100 enemy mercenaries in single combat. We also learn Casca's backstory, which is that she was sold to a passing noble, and Griffith helped her kill him when he tried to rape her. Ever since then, she's practically worshipped Griffith, and that worship causes her to feel confused about her growing feelings for Guts. Later on, Griffith and the Band of the Hawk stage an assault on Doldry Fortress, which had been in the hands of Midland's enemies for almost 100 years. He does this by tricking the enemy into sallying forth so that his auxiliary units can steal the castle out from under them, and his success ends the war and earns him another promotion. This also earns him another round of enemies he deals with by trapping them in a church and burning it to the ground. However, Guts has been growing restless while working for Griffith, and he leaves the Band of the Hawk just after they achieve their victory. Griffith doesn't take his leaving very well, and it causes him to trip up. He seduces the Princess of Midland, gets caught by her overprotective and incestuous father the king, and the king locks him in a dungeon to be tortured for a full year. After that year, Guts comes back to help the Band of the Hawk rescue their leader and to finally make love to Casca, but as he and the lieutenants fight a band of foreign assassins to free Griffith, the mercenaries who remain behind are consumed by a group of horrific monsters. A few things haven't changed since my last review. The art is still fantastic, and that includes the level of detail, the intricate backgrounds, and the use of dynamic camera angles and lighting. The story also continues to be for a mature audience only, with extensive depiction of both gore and nude figures, including both males and females. Casca in particular ends up partially nude quite often during these chapters, although that's mostly because of the increased focus on her backstory and her relationship with Guts. Speaking of which, I like how Miura managed to thread the needle with her character. The story acknowledges her femininity and the unique challenges she faces as a woman on the battlefield, and it depicts her as being weaker than both Guts and Griffith, but then we also have scenes where she cuts down the enemy like any other soldier, takes wounds but keeps on fighting, and she takes charge of the Band of the Hawk after Guts leaves and Griffith gets imprisoned. While she may be weaker than Guts, that still makes her the third best soldier in the Hawks, and she proves it by defeating an enemy commander in single combat. Something else I noticed is that since Puck is not yet part of the story, and since we've gotten past the dark days of Guts' youth, it's fallen on the regular human characters to provide comic relief in the form of side jokes and model breaks. The jokes often feel forced or disrespectful of the events transpiring, but then they also feel necessary. When you read a story as dark and as long as Berserk, you need occasional moments of levity to break up the tension and bring everything back down to earth. Without those moments, the constant stream of rape, incest, and murder can really wear you down. Another change in this part of the story is the way that supernatural elements have been slowly ramping up as we approach the eclipse and the climax of the Golden Age arc. Casca heals Guts' wounds with a pouch of old fairy dust. Guts gets warned about the coming eclipse by a mounted knight in skeleton armor, a knight whose horse can apparently leap into the sky. The foreign assassins are inhuman in the way they move, And as Griffith lies in the dungeon, 4 dark figures in a hole in the wall promise him great things to come. The analysis. This part of the Berserk manga is all about dreams. Everybody has dreams, but not everybody gets to keep hold of them. Some dreams are very personal and simple, some dreams are very broad and ambitious, and some dreams are to help other people achieve their dreams. And when opposing dreams come into conflict, tragedy is often the result. Griffith was a poor boy who grew up in the slum and dreamed of one day ruling the world, and he's prepared to do whatever it takes to achieve this dream. Casca was a poor girl who grew up in a border village, and she had no dream of a better life until Griffith came along and saved her. After that, her dream was to stay by Griffith's side and become someone he needed. But then she starts falling for Guts and starts to consider a different future. Guts also has no dream to begin with, but then he starts to realize that he wants to be Griffith's friend, and not just his servant. But to reach that point, he needs to be Griffith's equal, and for that, he needs to find a dream of his own, and he has to leave the Band of the Hawk to find it. And so we encounter a paradox, because in order for Guts to become closer to Griffith, he has to leave Griffith behind. Meanwhile, Griffith sees things in a very different light. He does describe what he would consider a friend at one point, but the thing is that he doesn't really want any friends. What he wants are tools. Tools he can use to achieve his dreams and then discard if he deems it necessary. And yet, he also has a certain weakness for Guts. A weakness that might be friendship, if Griffith was the sort of person who wanted friends, but because he isn't, it is instead the cause of his downfall. Griffith can't stand the idea that Guts would leave him for any reason, and so he forces Guts into one last duel for his freedom. Griffith is fully prepared to kill Guts if it comes to that because he doesn't want to let him go, but instead Guts wins. And because Griffith doesn't understand that he wants to be Guts' friend, and he doesn't understand that Guts wants to be his friend, he treats this action as a betrayal. Then afterwards he gets depressed and makes an impulsive decision that gets him arrested and tortured. Griffith's dream is a powerful dream, the kind of dream that leaves piles of broken dreams and broken bodies in its wake. But all dreams are fragile, and after a bad impact with Guts' dream, it veers off course and shatters on the rocks. However, the ruthless motivation that gave birth to Griffith's dream still exists, and he is still willing to do whatever it takes to reassemble the pieces. But what exactly that leads to, we'll have to wait until someone else requests Berserk. Thanks for joining me again for today's Threadbare review, and I hope I'll see you next time. Until then, please remember to like, share, and subscribe, and if you have a little extra money to spare, you can support me on Patreon. Link in the description.